Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we will be going over modern money mechanics just like we have over the past couple of weeks. This is of course a workbook on the bank reserves and deposit expansion by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. So this is a real document published by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago in the 1990s, I believe. So it's a fairly old document. Not a lot of people talk about it or know about it. And so as you guys know, in the last couple of videos we went over this section right here, what is money. We went over what makes money valuable, who creates money, and now in today's video we will be reading out of this section right here what limits the amount of money banks can create. So let's go ahead and get started. You guys can go ahead and screenshot this and read it on your own as well, but I'm going to go ahead and read through it right now. What limits the amount of money banks can create? If deposit money can be created so easily, what is to prevent banks from making too much? More than sufficient to keep the nation's productive resources fully employed without price inflation. Like its predecessor, the modern bank must keep available to make payment on demand a considerable amount of currency and funds on deposit with the central bank. The bank must be prepared to convert deposit money into currency for those depositors who request currency. It must make remittance on checks written by depositors and presented for payment by other banks, settle adverse clearings. Finally, it must maintain legally required reserves in the form of vault cash and or balances at its Federal Reserve Bank equal to a prescribed percentage of its deposits. So usually that's 10% of the deposits. So the public's demand for currency varies greatly, but generally follows a seasonal pattern that is quite predictable. The effects on bank funds of these variations in the amount of currency held by the public usually are offset by the central bank, which replaces the reserves absorbed by currency withdrawals from banks. Just how this is done will be explained later. For all banks taken together, there is no net drain of funds through clearings. A check drawn on one bank normally will be deposited to credit of another bank. If not in the same bank, then in some other bank. Those operating needs influence the minimum amount of reserves an individual bank will hold voluntarily. However, as long as this minimum amount is less than what is legally required, operating needs are of relatively minor importance as a restraint on aggregate deposit expansion in the banking system. Such expansion cannot continue beyond the point where the amount of reserves that all banks have is just sufficient to satisfy legal requirements under our fractional reserve system. For example, if reserves of 20% were required, deposits could expand only until there were 5 times as large as reserves. Reserves of $10 million could support deposits of $50 million. The lower the percentage requirement, the greater the deposit expansion that can be supported by each additional reserve dollar. Thus, the legal reserve ratio together with the dollar amount of bank reserves are the factors that set the upper limit to money creation. Alright guys, so that was what limits the amount of money banks can create. Very interesting information. You know, they talked about the percentage of deposits that they have to keep on hand, and it's not common knowledge, but it's widely discussed that they keep 10% on hand. So for every $100 that you deposit into a bank, they are lending out 90 and only keeping 10. So like I've mentioned in other videos, if you guys ever tried to withdraw a large amount of money, let's say $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 from the bank at one time, they more than likely will not have it, even though it is in your account. You'll have to get that ordered. As crazy as that sounds, that's just what it is. And you can see here on why and what they do as far as limiting and having a deposit on hand. So that was this section. So in the next video we're going to go over what are bank reserves, and then the video after that, where do bank reserves come from. For now, this was Modern Money Mechanics, as usual, workbook on bank reserves and deposit expansion by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, and I will see you guys in the video next week. Peace.